The Saren High Council, Era announced to the stunned assembly, has come to formalize our offer. The tallest of the delegates stepped forward. Unlike Era, he made no attempt to speak aloud. Instead, his thoughts projected directly into the minds of everyone present, not invasively, but like a gentle, clear voice heard from within. People of Earth, the thought voice said, we have watched your world for centuries. We have seen your wars and your kindnesses, your destruction and your creation. You stand now at a crossroads. The other Saren moved forward to form a line beside Era and June. Each carried what appeared to be a small crystal, which they raised in unison. The crystals floated from their hands to hover in the center of the chamber, arranging themselves into a complex geometric pattern that began to spin and glow. Through our bond, Era announced, taking June's hand, we offer Earth protection and partnership instead of conquest or isolation. The choice is yours. The floating crystals projected a massive holographic display, a complete map of the galaxy with Earth highlighted, showing its position relative to dozens of other inhabited worlds. Information flowed through the display, too much to comprehend at once, but conveying the vastness and diversity of the galactic community. As diplomats erupted into chaos, some demanding answers, others staring in awe, Jun felt surprisingly calm through his connection with Era. The path ahead would not be easy. There would be resistance, fear, conflict. Some would see the Saren as saviors, others as conquerors. Human societies would be transformed in ways no one could fully predict. But in this moment, standing between two worlds, Jun finally understood why his grandfather had arranged everything so carefully. The old man had seen further than others, had understood that humanity needed a bridge to the stars, not through governments or militaries, but through a personal connection that transcended species. What happens now? The Secretary General asked, his voice barely audible above the commotion. Now, Jun said, looking not at the officials but at the cameras that carried his image to ordinary people around the world, we decide what kind of galactic citizens we want to be. Through his bond with Era, he could sense the Saren Council's approval. They had chosen well in selecting his grandfather all those years ago, and in sending Era to complete the connection. What had begun with a strange inheritance had transformed into humanity's most important moment, their introduction to the stars, beginning with an unexpected marriage. As June stood with Era's hand in his, he thought of his grandfather and whispered a silent thank you across time. The old man had known that the greatest journeys often begin with the most unexpected first steps. Earth's journey to the stars had begun with a locked capsule and an alien bride. Where it would lead was a story still waiting to be written, by all of humanity together. Era stepped fully out of the capsule, the last drops of fluid evaporating instantly from her skin. Up close, June could see faint patterns on her skin, almost like circuitry, visible only when she moved a certain way in the light. Your grandfather was a remarkable man, she said, looking around the apartment with curious eyes. He understood much more than others of your kind. He saw beyond your world when no one else could. June backed up until he hit the wall. Are you saying you're not human? Era's laugh was like wind chimes in a breeze. Of course not. My home is. She paused, seeming to search for words. You would call it Kepler 442 bits, though that is not our name for it. June felt dizzy. Kepler 442 bits was an exoplanet discovered decades ago, considered one of the most Earth-like worlds ever found, about 1,200 light-years away. This is impossible, he whispered. Your grandfather did not think so, Era replied, moving toward June's bookshelf with curious steps. She picked up a physics textbook, flipping through it with a slight smile. He was eager to learn about us, as we were about you. The arrangement was his idea. What arrangement? June asked, though a sinking feeling told him he already knew. Era turned to him, her head tilted slightly. The marriage contract, of course. It was sealed 50 of your Earth years ago. I was chosen and sent here, placed in stasis until the right genetic match was found. She smiled again. That is you, Jun Park. You are the most compatible with my biology. That is why the capsule recognized you. Jun slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor. This can't be happening. Era approached him slowly, then crouched down to his level, studying his face with those alien eyes. Your response is understandable. It must be strange to meet your wife for the first time. You're not my wife, Jun said weakly. Not yet by your customs, Era acknowledged. But by the laws of my world and the agreement your grandfather signed, our union was predetermined. She reached out a hand, stopping just short of touching his face. We have much to learn about each other, Jun Park, and very little time before others discover I have awakened. Others? Jun asked. Era's expression grew serious. There are those on your planet who have suspected our existence for some time. They will be looking for me now that my capsule has opened. And they will come for you too. Outside, as if on cue, Jun heard the sound of car doors slamming shut. Jun paced back and forth across his small living room, occasionally glancing at the alien woman who sat perfectly still on his couch. She had found clothes in his closet, a simple white button-up shirt and black pants that hung loosely on her slender frame. The sight was somehow more unsettling than when she'd first emerged naked from the capsule. You're saying you're an alien? He asked for the third time, his voice rising slightly, like an actual extraterrestrial being from another planet. Era observed him with those disconcerting violet eyes. She hadn't blinked once in the 20 minutes since she'd emerged from the capsule. Yes, she replied simply. Though the concept of alien is relative, on my world, you would be the alien. Jun ran his hands through his hair. This can't be happening. Aliens don't exist. They definitely don't show up in weird pods in people's apartments claiming to be mail-order brides. Hera tilted her head slightly. I understand this is difficult for you to accept. Would more information help? Sure, why not? Jun threw his hands up. Tell me all about how my crazy grandfather apparently arranged an interstellar marriage without telling anyone. Hera straightened, her posture becoming more formal. My people are called the Siren, she explained. Her voice had a strange musical quality that made even simple statements sound important. We have existed as a spacefaring civilization for what you would measure as approximately 50,000 Earth years. 50,000. Jun shook his head in disbelief. Your world is classified as a developing civilization under galactic protocol, she continued. This means you are recognized as intelligent life with technological potential, but have not yet achieved certain benchmarks for official contact. Benchmarks? Like what? Unified planetary governance, sustainable resource management, faster-than-light travel capabilities. Era listed these as casually as someone might recite a grocery list. Your species has made remarkable progress in some areas, but remains primitive in others. So why are you here if we're so primitive? Jun stopped pacing to look directly at her. Your grandfather was chosen as a point of contact, she said. He detected signals we sent deliberately to identify exceptional individuals on developing worlds. Most humans missed these signals, but he recognized patterns where others saw only noise. He reached out, and we answered. My grandfather claimed to hear alien signals, and everyone thought he was crazy. Jun's voice softened as pieces of his childhood began to make sense. The late nights in the observatory, the increasingly erratic behavior, the family's embarrassment. They put him in a psychiatric facility for a while. I was just a kid. He was not insane, Era said firmly. He was brilliant. When he demonstrated that he could understand our messages despite your world's technological limitations, my people determined he was an outlier worthy of direct contact. Jun sank into the chair opposite her. And what? You just showed up one day. A diplomatic delegation made contact 48 Earth years ago. Your grandfather was offered a cultural exchange opportunity. He proposed the marriage contract. He suggested this, Jun asked incredulously. Era touched the strange pendant that hung at her neck. It looked like a teardrop-shaped crystal with something moving inside it. It was a solution that satisfied both sides. We gained a legitimate connection to Earth through familial bonds, which are recognized as sacred across most sapient species. Your grandfather gained access to knowledge that could help humanity advance. As her fingers brushed the pendant, it began to glow with an inner light. Suddenly, the air above the coffee table between them shimmered, and a three-dimensional projection appeared. A star map of incredible detail and complexity. Tiny points of light formed constellations and systems, with some areas highlighted in different colors. "This is the known galaxy," Era said. "The blue regions are inhabited by various sentient species. The green shows neutral or shared territories. Red indicates prohibited zones, due to natural dangers or diplomatic quarantine." June stared, transfixed. The map was unlike anything human astronomy had produced. It showed structures and connections between star systems that no Earth telescope had ever detected. "The marriage contract was designed to protect Earth while introducing your species gradually to the wider community of worlds," Era continued. "Without such protection, Earth would be vulnerable to less ethical interests in the galaxy." "Less ethical interests?" June asked, alarmed. "Not all species prioritize consent or autonomy the way Serens do," she replied. Her expression darkened slightly. "Some view developing worlds as resources to be harvested or laborers to be exploited." "This is insane," June muttered, but he couldn't deny the evidence floating before him. The holographic technology alone was beyond anything humans had developed. And there was something about Era, subtle details in her movements, the impossible color of her eyes, the faint shimmering patterns beneath her skin, that couldn't be explained by any human condition. His phone rang suddenly, shattering the moment. June pulled it from his pocket, grateful for the interruption. The screen showed his colleague Kim's name. "Hey, Kim," he answered, trying to sound normal. "June." Kim's voice was hushed and urgent. "There's government agents here asking questions about unusual energy signatures detected at your address. They've got some kind of scanning equipment, and they're talking about radiation levels. What the hell is going on?" June's eyes shot to Era, who was listening intently. "I don't know what you're talking about," he lied. "Everything's fine here." "They're saying it's a matter of national security, June. They got people from the Energy Commission, military guys in civilian clothes, even some foreign consultants. Whatever you're doing, they're taking it seriously." "I'm not doing anything," June insisted, a cold feeling spreading through his chest. "Well, they're heading your way now. Just thought you should know." Kim hung up before June could respond. Era's expression turned serious, the star map vanishing as she stood. "They cannot find me," she said, her voice suddenly firm. "If I am harmed, my people will consider it an act of war." "War?" June felt his mouth go dry. "You're talking about an actual war. With Earth. The Seren do not enter conflicts lightly, but we protect our own without exception." She moved to the window, peering carefully around the edge of the curtain. "Our marriage contract activates certain diplomatic protections. Under galactic law, you and I are now considered a protected diplomatic unit. We're not married," June protested. "The opening of the stasis chamber and your DNA activation constitutes acceptance under the terms of the agreement," Era replied, still watching the street below. "I should have explained this sooner. I apologize." June heard cars pulling up outside his building. "What do we do?" he asked, panic rising. Era turned to him, her alien eyes reflecting the afternoon light in a way that human eyes never could. "Do you have a vehicle?" "Yes, my car's in the parking garage." "We need to leave immediately. There is a safe location programmed into my memory. Your grandfather prepared it years ago for this eventuality." "You want me to just run? Leave everything behind?" June gestured around his apartment. "My job, my life." "Your life is already changed, John Park," Era said gently. "The moment you opened my capsule, nothing could go back to how it was. These men will not understand what I am. They will see a threat to be contained or a technology to be exploited. Neither outcome ends well for you or your planet. The sound of footsteps in the hallway made both of them freeze. "Trust me," Era whispered, holding out her hand. "I was sent here to protect your world, not harm it. But I cannot do that locked in some government facility." June looked at her outstretched hand, then at the door where a heavy knock was just beginning to sound. "Park, June. This is the National Security Service. Open the door immediately." With a deep breath, Joan took Era's hand. It was warm and felt almost human, except for a subtle vibration beneath the skin, like touching something filled with quiet energy. "The back stairs," he whispered. "They lead directly to the garage." As they slipped out the back door of his apartment, Joan realized his grandfather's final gift wasn't just the alien woman. It was the chance to discover that humanity was not alone in the universe, and whether he was ready or not, he had just become Earth's most important diplomatic link to the stars. The mountain road curved sharply as June pushed his car faster. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel, and his heart pounded in his chest. 12 hours ago, his biggest worry had been finishing a report for work. Now he was running from government agents with an alien who claimed to be his wife. "Are you sure this car can handle these turns?" he asked nervously as the tires squealed around another bend. In the passenger seat, Era sat unnaturally still, focused on a strange device in her lap. She had built it in minutes by dismantling June's microwave and smartphone, connecting the parts with threads of silvery material pulled from her pendant. The resulting object looked like a cross between a compass and a small radar screen. "They're still following," she said calmly, as if being chased by shadowy government forces was a minor inconvenience. 3 vehicles, approximately 2 kilometers behind us." June glanced in the rearview mirror, but saw only darkness. The rural mountain road had no streetlights, and they had turned off their headlights 5 minutes ago. Somehow, Era could see perfectly in the dark, guiding him through each turn. "How can you be so calm?" June asked. "We're being hunted." Era looked up from her device. "I've been prepared for this possibility since before you were born," she said simply. "Your grandfather knew first contact would not be easy for your authorities to accept." June shook his head in disbelief. "My family thought he was losing his mind. All those years in his observatory, the strange equipment, the coded journals. Everyone thought it was paranoia." "Humans often mistake what they cannot understand for madness," Era replied. Her voice held no judgment, only observation. "Your grandfather saw further than others of your kind. He knew the stars were full of life." The road straightened briefly, and June accelerated. His old car groaned in protest. "This vehicle has limitations," Era noted, checking her device again. The small screen pulsed with colored light. "The pursuers are gaining. Their vehicles are faster." As if on cue, headlights appeared in the distance behind them, growing rapidly brighter. The lead black SUV had found them and was closing the gap quickly. "They're going to catch us," Jun said, panic rising in his voice. "This car can't outrun them." Era set her device on the dashboard and turned to face him. "Do you trust me, Jun Park?" Jun glanced at her. In the dim light from the dashboard, her violet eyes seemed to glow. Did he trust her? This alien being who had crashed into his life hours ago, who claimed to be his wife through some agreement made before he was born. The headlights behind them grew brighter. He was out of options. "I guess I have to," he answered. Era nodded once, then placed her hand flat against the dashboard. "Keep the wheel steady," she instructed. A soft hum filled the car as her hand began to glow. The strange circuitry-like patterns beneath her skin brightened, and energy visibly flowed down her arm into the vehicle. The dashboard lights flickered, then burned brighter than before. The engine note changed from a strained whine to a powerful purr. When the lead SUV suddenly accelerated behind them, closing to within 50 meters, Era pressed her palm more firmly against the dashboard. "Now," she said. The car's electronics surged with energy, and they shot forward with impossible speed. June was pushed back into his seat as his modest sedan suddenly accelerated like a sports car. The speedometer needle swung rapidly past limits the vehicle was never designed to reach. "How did you?" June gasped, struggling to keep the suddenly responsive car on the road. "Simple energy manipulation," she said, as if she hadn't just broken the laws of physics. "Your technology is inefficient. It wastes approximately 70% of available energy. I merely improved the conversion ratio temporarily." The headlights behind them shrank to distant points, then disappeared around a bend. June was still trying to process what had happened when Era pointed ahead. "Your grandfather left us a safe location," she said. "Take the next exit." The exit was barely visible, an overgrown dirt road that looked more like a hiking trail than a driveway. June turned sharply, and they bumped along the rough path as it wound up the mountainside. After about a mile, the trees opened up to reveal an abandoned observatory. The dome-shaped building stood silhouetted against the night sky, its telescope long gone. Vines crawled up its walls, and the windows were boarded up. It looked like it had been deserted for decades. "This is it?" June asked doubtfully as he parked behind the building, out of sight from the road. "The entrance is not obvious by design," Era replied, gathering her makeshift device. "Your grandfather was very careful." She led him to what appeared to be a maintenance shed attached to the main building. Inside, among dusty tools and abandoned equipment, she knelt and pressed her hand against a specific spot on the concrete floor. Like the capsule in June's apartment, the surface responded to her touch, revealing hidden patterns of light before a section of the floor slid silently aside. "After you," she said, gesturing to the revealed staircase. June hesitated, then began descending the metal stairs. Motion-activated lights came on as they moved downward, revealing a passage that extended deep into the mountain. After about 30 steps, they reached a heavy door with a familiar pattern etched into its surface, the same design that had decorated Era's capsule. "Place your hand on the center mark," Era instructed. When June complied, the door recognized his DNA, just as the capsule had done. It opened with a soft hiss of equalizing pressure, revealing a space that took his breath away. The bunker was large, at least 1,000 square feet, and filled with equipment that looked both familiar and alien. Computer terminals sat alongside devices June couldn't begin to identify. One wall was lined with books and journals. Another held supplies, food, water, clothing, and other necessities. "My grandfather built all this?" June asked in amazement as the door sealed behind them. "With our help," Era said, moving immediately to a control panel. She placed her hand on it, and the systems came to life, screens lighting up with data. "This facility has been waiting for almost 50 years. As Era worked at the controls, June wandered to the wall of books. He pulled one of the journals from the shelf and opened it. Inside, he found his grandfather's familiar handwriting, alongside diagrams, equations, and what appeared to be an alien script. "October 15, 1977, June read aloud. "First successful translation of Sarin mathematical concepts. Their understanding of space-time curvature exceeds our most advanced theories by centuries." He flipped through more pages, each filled with notes documenting meetings and exchanges of knowledge. July 3, 1979. "The Sarin Council has accepted my proposal. A genetic compatibility study will determine which of my descendants will be matched with their emissary. The marriage bond will secure Earth's position as a protected developing world." June looked up at Era. "He planned all this for me." Era finished her work at the control panel and approached him. "He knew you would be the one," she said, standing close enough that June could smell her strange, spice-like scent, something like cinnamon and ozone. "Our genetic compatibility is why I was sent to you specifically." "But why marriage?" June asked, closing the journal. "Why not just official diplomatic contact?" "Your world is not ready for open contact," Era explained gently. "The shock would destabilize your societies. But personal bonds, Those can bridge worlds. One human and one Saren, united by choice and compatibility. She paused. Though I understand this feels like no choice at all to you, given the circumstances. June set the journal back on the shelf. So what happens now? Now we wait, Era said, moving to another panel. This facility is shielded from detection, but we must contact my people to inform them I have awakened. There are protocols that must be followed. As she worked, June noticed something on a nearby table, a framed photograph he recognized. It showed his grandfather holding a young boy, June himself, perhaps 5 or 6 years old. They were standing in front of this very observatory, both smiling widely. I remember this day, June said softly, picking up the photo. He showed me Jupiter through the telescope. I asked if there were people on other planets, and he said. June paused, the memory suddenly vivid. He said, someday you'll meet them, and they'll change everything. Era looked up from her work, her violet eyes meeting his. He was preparing you, in his way. June set the photo down, a new determination settling over him. Then let's not waste his preparation. Tell me everything I need to know about the Saren, about our arrangement, and about what happens next. If I'm going to be Earth's first alien husband, I should at least understand what I've gotten myself into. For the first time since they'd met, Era smiled, a genuine expression that softened her alien features and made her seem almost human. That, she said, is exactly what your grandfather would have said. June watched as Era's hands moved across the communication array with practiced precision. Her fingers danced over controls that seemed to respond as much to her thoughts as to her touch. After 3 weeks in the bunker, he had grown used to the sight of alien technology, but it still amazed him. The signal is almost ready, Era said, not looking up from her work. The transmission window opens in 17 minutes. Across the room, an older man with silver-streaked hair frowned at the equipment. Dr. Daeho Kim had been the first to respond to the coded message Jun had sent out through his grandfather's old network, a retired astrophysicist who had once worked alongside Jun's grandfather. Daeho was one of the handful of humans aware of the Saren's existence. "You're certain this will work?" asked Daeho, his voice carrying the weight of decades spent waiting for this moment. Earth's satellite network has advanced considerably since your last information update. They might detect the transmission. June nodded confidently. Era has modified the signal to appear as ordinary space background radiation. Even if they detect something, they won't recognize it for what it is. In the 3 weeks since their escape from Seoul, they had discovered that Jun's grandfather had built more than just a bunker. He had established an entire network of trusted individuals, scientists, former military personnel, civilians with particular skills, all quietly prepared for the day when the Saren would return. Some had dismissed the old man's tales as fantasy over the years, but they had still kept their promises to help when the time came. 5 of those people now occupied the bunker with June and Era. Besides Daeho, there was Min-ji, a former intelligence officer, Ta-won, a communications expert, Soo-jung, a biologist, and Hyunwoo, a young hacker who had never met Jun's grandfather but had been recruited by Min-ji years ago. The government teams are still searching the mountains, Hyunwoo reported from his surveillance station, but they're focusing on the eastern ridge now. We should be clear for at least 48 hours. That's all the time we need, Era said, finally looking up from her work. The patterns beneath her skin glowed faintly in the dim light of the bunker. The advanced ship enters orbit tonight. Once they confirm my status, the diplomatic protocols will activate. Min-ji, who had been cleaning a handgun at the table, set it down with a sharp click. And if your people decide Earth isn't worth the trouble, if they just leave you here? It was a question they had all carefully avoided until now. June felt a surge of protectiveness toward Ara, though he knew she needed no protection. The Saren have waited 50 of your years for this moment, Era replied calmly. We do not abandon our investments or our people. And what exactly are we to your people? Sujung asked. The biologist had been studying Era with fascination since their arrival. An investment. An experiment. A potential ally, Era said. One of many developing worlds we monitor. But Earth has certain qualities that make it particularly interesting. Like what? Tadwan asked. Your adaptability. Your creativity. Your capacity for radical change in short time periods. Era's violet eyes scanned the room. Most species take thousands of years to progress from basic tools to space exploration. Humans did it in less than 300. A soft tone from the communication array interrupted the conversation. Era turned back to her work, adjusting final settings. It's time, she said. The transmission window is open. The room fell silent as Era placed both hands on the central panel of the array. Her skin began to glow more intensely, the circuitry-like patterns forming complex geometries as energy flowed from her body into the machine. The array hummed to life, projecting a holographic display of Earth and its immediate space environment. Signal away, she announced after a moment. Now we wait. June moved to stand beside her. Over the past weeks, their relationship had evolved from suspicion to cautious partnership to something deeper that neither of them had fully defined. He had learned about her world, a planet of towering crystal cities and vast oceans where the Saren had evolved first as aquatic beings before adapting to land. She had learned about his childhood, his work as an engineer, his hopes before his life had been upended by her arrival. How long until they respond? He asked quietly. If all goes as planned, we should receive confirmation within 6 hours, she replied. The scout ship is already in the outer system, observing. The others dispersed to their tasks, preparing for what would come next. Only Daeho remained, watching June and Era with knowing eyes. Your grandfather would be proud, the old scientist said. He always said it would be you, even when you were just a boy. What do you mean? June asked. Daeho smiled sadly. He tested all his descendants, your cousins, your siblings. None had the specific genetic markers the Saren required. But you, he said you had a mind that could bridge worlds. June felt a weight settle on his shoulders. All this time, he had thought their estrangement had been about his career choices, his refusal to follow in his grandfather's scientific footsteps. Now he understood it had been protection, keeping him separate until the time was right. Later that evening, as the others slept, Era led June to a small chamber deep within the bunker. The room was circular, its walls inscribed with the same patterns that had adorned Era's capsule. In the center stood a low platform with 2 sets of handprints marked on its surface. What is this place? June asked, though he already suspected the answer. This is where we complete our bond, Era said softly. Until now, our connection has been formal but incomplete. The marriage contract requires final acknowledgement by both parties. June hesitated. Is this reversible? Era's expression was gentle but serious. No, once joined, the bond remains until death. This is why I've waited until you were ready to choose freely. And if I say no, then I continue to protect you as best I can, but without the full diplomatic recognition that comes with our bonding. My people would still come, but your status would be diminished. She took his hands in hers. I do not wish to force this choice, June, but time grows short, and the bond would give us advantages we may need. June looked at their joined hands, her skin against his, alien yet increasingly familiar. Over the weeks, he had watched her fight to protect him, to honor his grandfather's vision, to prepare Earth for what was coming. He had seen her joy at simple human experiences, tasting spicy food, feeling rain on her skin during a brief venture outside, listening to music that moved her in ways she couldn't explain. She was not human, but she was a person. And somehow, against all logic, he had come to care for her. What do we need to do? He asked at last. Relief softened Era's features. We place our hands on the markers and recite the words of joining. The chamber will do the rest. They stepped onto the platform together. June placed his hands on the marks that seemed sized exactly for his palms. Era did the same opposite him, their faces close enough that he could see the silver flecks in her violet eyes. "Repeat after me," she said, then began speaking in her own language, sounds no human throat could produce, musical and strange. "I can't possibly say that," Jum said with a nervous laugh. "The intent matters more than the sounds," Era assured him. "Say, I join with you freely, two paths becoming one." June repeated the words, feeling the platform warm beneath his palms. Era spoke again in her language, then translated. "My mind opens to yours, my strength becomes yours, our futures intertwined." As June repeated these words, the patterns on the walls began to glow. Energy spiraled around them, connecting their hands on the platform. "With this bond, I claim you as mine and offer myself as yours, across the stars and beyond time." June spoke the final phrase, and the energy surged between them. A wave of sensation washed over him. Not pain, but a deep, resonant connection that seemed to reach into his very cells. He gasped as a strange warmth spread through his mind, a presence that was distinctly Era, yet somehow not intrusive. "I can feel you," he whispered in amazement, experiencing her thoughts, her emotions, her very essence. She smiled, her joy flowing through their connection. "This is only the beginning of what our peoples can share," she said, both aloud and directly into his mind. The bond settled into place, no longer overwhelming but present like a gentle background hum. June could sense Era's relief, her affection, and something deeper that might, in human terms, be called love, though it had dimensions and complexities beyond simple emotion. Above them, invisible to Earth's monitoring systems, a Saren scout ship received their signal and established position in high orbit. The first official contact between Earth and the stars was hours away, and it would begin not with governments or armies, but with a bond between two people from worlds apart. As they left the chamber, hands still linked, Jun felt both more himself and something greater, part of a bridge between civilizations that his grandfather had begun building half a century ago. "What happens now?" he asked, both curious and apprehensive about their future. Era's answer came not just in words, but in shared understanding through their new connection. "Now," she said, "we change the universe." The morning dawned clear and bright, though few people noticed the beauty of the day. Most of humanity was indoors, eyes fixed on screens of every size, as they watched the most extraordinary broadcast in history. For 17 minutes, an unknown signal had overridden every television channel, radio station, and internet platform worldwide, showing impossible things. People saw a woman with violet eyes manipulate energy with her bare hands. They watched objects levitate, wounds heal instantly, and water turn to crystal and back again. They observed mathematical equations that solved problems scientists had struggled with for decades. Most stunning of all, they witnessed a small craft rise into the air and disappear, only to reappear seconds later on the other side of the world. The broadcast ended with a simple message. "Tomorrow, the United Nations will host first contact. The world will never be the same." Now, 24 hours later, Jun straightened his tie as he waited in a small room adjacent to the United Nations Security Council chamber. The building was surrounded by military forces from a dozen nations, the airspace locked down, the streets filled with both protesters and celebrants. "Are you ready?" Era asked, her voice gentle in his mind through their bond. June turned to look at her and felt his breath catch. She wore traditional Saren diplomatic attire, a flowing garment that seemed to be made of living light, shifting colors with her movements and thoughts. Her violet eyes were accentuated by subtle markings on her face that signified her status among her people. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied, adjusting his cuffs. His own outfit was more conventional, a simple black suit that had been waiting for him when they arrived at the UN under heavy escort. "How are they reacting out there?" Era's expression was serene, but through their connection, Jum could feel her monitoring multiple information streams simultaneously. Fear, excitement, disbelief, hope. Your species experiences many emotions at once. That's humans for you, Jum said with a nervous laugh. Complicated. The door opened, and a UN official appeared. They're ready for you, she said, her professional demeanor barely concealing her awe as she stared at Ara. Together, they followed her down a long corridor. Security personnel lined the walls, their hands never far from their weapons. June sensed Ara's amusement at this, as if human weapons could harm her if she didn't wish it. Remember, Ara said silently through their bond. Speak from your heart. They need to hear a human voice right now, not just mine. The United Nations Security Council meeting had been hastily assembled after the worldwide broadcast. Representatives from 15 nations sat around the famous horseshoe-shaped table, their faces tense with the weight of history. Behind them, additional seats had been added for world leaders who had demanded to be present. The gallery above was filled with journalists and diplomats, all fallen silent as June and Ara entered. They walked to the center of the chamber where a podium had been placed. No introduction was given. None was needed. Every person in the room, and the billions watching worldwide, knew why they were there. June took a deep breath and looked out at the faces before him. Some hostile, some frightened, some hopeful. These people represented humanity, with all its flaws and potential. For a moment, the enormity of what was happening threatened to overwhelm him. Then he felt Ara's presence in his mind, a steady support. "My name is Park June," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. 3 months ago, I was an ordinary engineer living in Seoul. Then I received an inheritance from my grandfather, a sealed capsule containing the woman who stands beside me. Murmurs rippled through the audience as Ara inclined her head slightly in acknowledgement. What followed has brought us to this historic moment, June continued. I know many of you have questions. Some have called this a hoax or a threat. Others have already begun to worship the Siren as gods. Neither response is correct. He paused, looking directly into the cameras that would carry his words to every corner of Earth. Humanity has never been alone. He addressed the stunned representatives. The question isn't whether aliens exist, but how we'll join the galactic community. The chamber erupted in whispers and exclamations. The Secretary General raised a hand for silence, which slowly fell across the room. Mr. Park, said the Secretary General, you speak of joining a galactic community. Are we to understand that there are multiple alien civilizations? Before June could answer, Ara stepped forward. Her movement was fluid, almost hypnotic, drawing all eyes to her. Your world exists within a vast network of intelligent species, she said, her melodic voice carrying effortlessly. Some have existed for millions of your years. Others are younger than humanity. All once stood where you stand now, at the threshold of a greater understanding. And what assurance do we have that this greater understanding isn't simply conquest by another name? Demanded the representative from Russia, his face hard with suspicion. A fair question, Ara acknowledged. In truth, there are those in the galaxy who would see Earth as a resource to be claimed. This is precisely why I was sent, to establish a protected status for your world through diplomatic bonds. Diplomatic bonds. The Chinese representative leaned forward. You refer to your supposed marriage to Mr. Park. June felt a flash of irritation at the word supposed, but Ara's calm steadied him through their connection. The bond between myself and June is recognized across multiple civilizations as a legitimate diplomatic union, Ara explained. It grants Earth provisional protected status under galactic conventions. And if we reject this arrangement? Asked the American representative. The atmosphere in the room tensed. This was the question everyone feared to ask. Then Earth would be considered an unaligned world, Ara said simply. Free to make its own path, but also without protection. Is that a threat? The French representative asked sharply. It is reality, Ara replied. The universe is not always kind to developing worlds. My people prefer to offer guidance rather than witness exploitation. June sensed the mounting tension and stepped forward again. What Era offers is an alliance, not subjugation. The Saren have technologies that could help us solve our greatest challenges: climate change, disease, energy scarcity. But more importantly, they offer us a place in something greater than ourselves. Skeptical faces stared back at him. June realized they needed more than words. Perhaps, he said, looking to Era, it's time for your colleagues to join us. Era nodded and raised her hand. The pendant at her throat glowed brightly, and behind them, the solid wall of the chamber seemed to dissolve like mist. In its place stood 7 tall figures, each with the same iridescent skin and alien features as Era, though with variations in coloring and form. Their clothing, like Era's, seemed made of living light, shifting and flowing with each movement. Gasps and cries filled the room. Security personnel reached for weapons but found themselves unable to move, not through force, but through a gentle field that simply suggested stillness.